Jaguar is a brand that I'm sure we all know for that leaping Jaguar logo, and of course for selling higher-end premium automobiles. Historically, it has been among the most notable and respected British automakers. With roots technically going back over a century, I would argue that the most eventful and potentially concerning period for them has been happening over the past few years. Unit sales have been dramatically falling in their biggest markets of the United States and Europe. In fact, in July of 2025, it was widely reported that their European sales had fallen 97% compared to the previous year. That specific piece of information might be a little deceiving because the reason behind that lack of sales is that Jaguar has mostly stopped making vehicles for right now. In 2024, they stopped production on most of their models, with plans to come back in a much different way in 2026. But in the meantime, their drastic rebranding efforts and an unusual ad campaign have been publicly criticized by a lot of people, including Donald Trump. I cannot even imagine that there is another business story quite like this one. So for this video, I want to talk about the history of Jaguar while highlighting what I believe to be 5 of the biggest reasons behind its decline. William Lyons is the main person behind the creation and initial success of Jaguar. In 1922, with a £1,000 loan from a local bank in Blackpool, England, he teamed up with William Walmsley to start the Swallow Sidecar Company. As the name suggests, they specialized in making motorcycle sidecars, but in less than a decade they introduced their first car, the SS1, which stood for Standard Swallow, and that quickly became the core of their business. 2 years later, William Lyons bought out his partner's share of the business and renamed the company SS Cars. Then in 1935, he started releasing cars under the name Jaguar, and a decade later, after production returned to normal after World War II, he renamed the company Jaguar. The name change was partially to reflect the car brand that it was becoming known for, and partially to avoid any confusion with the SS lightning bolt symbol that had become associated with the Nazi Party. In 1948, it was the XK120 that really helped put the company on the map, especially in the United States. The 120-mile-per-hour top speed, like it says in the name, made it the fastest production car in the world. Originally, that only planned to produce a few hundred of them, but the demand was so high that they ended up making over 12,000 of them over the next few years. Advertisements back then promoted grace, space, and pace, as Jaguar built a reputation in the racing world, winning the 24 Hours of Le Mans 5 times throughout the 1950s, which, trust me, is a huge deal for a sports car brand. Celebrities like Steve McQueen became associated with it, and by some measures, like overall reputation, the 1950s and 1960s could be considered the peak of this brand. Starting off my list of reasons behind Jaguar's decline, my first one is going to be economic factors. I admit this might not be the most exciting reason, but it has been a huge factor over the years. Considering Jaguar is a premium brand, it is especially vulnerable to economic downturns or periods of high inflation, since people generally have less money to spend during those times, and considering that the company has traditionally exported most of its cars, mainly to the United States, it has been especially vulnerable to exchange rates. An example would be in 1966, William Lyons sold the company to British Motor Corporation. He was 64 years old, looking to retire soon, and since inflation at the time was harming the auto industry, he took the opportunity to make over $3 million on the deal while maintaining most of the voting shares. 9 years after that, the company was having issues, partially due to a downturn in the economy to go along with high gasoline prices, and since it was the biggest exporter in the country, the British government essentially took it over to ensure that it would not fail. These are just a few early examples of how the economy and external world events have had a major impact on Jaguar, and I think you will see more of them as I continue on with my list. The next reason behind their decline is reliability, something that anyone familiar with Jaguar is probably not surprised to hear right now. As you would expect with almost any automaker, there have been various quality and safety issues over the years. Probably the most notable one in recent times would be batteries overheating and at risk of catching fire on their 2019 I-Pace electric vehicles. It was recalled 5 times before the company ultimately agreed to buy back over 2,700 of them. them. But the most infamous issues were related to the XJ models in the 1980s. It is believed to be linked to Lucas, the electronics company that they used for their vehicles at the time, but also during that time when they were owned by the British Motor Corporation and the British government, it is generally believed that there was a lack of organization and quality control at the Jaguar plants. In 1990, when their new CEO was given a tour of those plants, he later said that they were some of the worst he had ever seen. Obviously, a lot of speculation here, but the fact of the matter is that it hurt their reputation, and even though most of the issues were addressed in the 1990s, the doubts have continued to linger for many people considering if they should buy a Jaguar. My next reason on the list, I think I have to include Range Rover, another major car brand from England that just keeps getting connected to Jaguar. I thought it was interesting that the car used to transport the Prime Minister used to be a Rover for the longest time until Margaret Thatcher started using a Jaguar in the 1980s. But then, over the past few years, Jaguar stopped producing the XJ models, so recently it was switched back to a Rover along with an Audi. See, in 1990, Jaguar was acquired by Ford for $2.4 billion. 10 years later, Range Rover was acquired by Ford for $2.9 billion. In 2008, the two brands were sold together to the Indian conglomerate Tata for only $2.3 billion, less money than they had paid for either one individually. In 2013, Jaguar Land Rover Automotive was created as the parent company for the two, and over the years, Rover has performed significantly better. It has been theorized that Rover has been receiving much more money and attention from the company, while Jaguar has been more of an afterthought. I'm just saying that the company would probably prefer you to buy one of their Range Rover luxury SUVs over their Jaguar luxury SUVs. So as the SUV market has grown, Range Rover has sort of prevented Jaguar from taking full advantage of it. My next reason on the list might just be the most significant, and that is trying to appeal to a mass market. Let me explain here. Going all the way back to at least the 1970s, Jaguar has had so much trouble trying to turn a profit. I cannot even imagine how many millions of dollars it has lost over that time. It has been a consistently losing brand that has mostly been kept alive by larger companies willing to accept that loss as they try to make it profitable. But after 50 plus years of failed attempts, you really have to wonder if it is ever going to happen. In 1980, when John Egan was famously brought in to turn Jaguar around, he was told by the head of the parent company to either turn it round or close it down. It's bleeding us to death. When it was bought by Ford 10 years later, it was looking like there was going to be a bidding war with General Motors, but they backed out of it, saying that Jaguar was losing too much money and would require too much investment to justify paying that much for it. And even Ford at the time admitted that they were paying such a big premium because they felt that the brand name had a lot of value. The whole plan at the time was to raise sales volume. If they could sell more cars, then economies of scale would bring the cost down and make it profitable. So to raise sales, they started offering more models that were more widely appealing and more affordable. And over this time, they did succeed in making Jaguar much more mainstream. It was even featured in the 007 movie Die Another Day. But in the process, Jaguar was positioned to compete with the same customers as much more popular brands like Mercedes and BMW. So after owning Jaguar for 18 years and never quite reaching the level of their competitors, Ford sold it, I believe without ever reporting a profit from it. I mean, just consider that if a company like Ford is unable to utilize the brand power to scale it to a point where it is making money, it just seems really unlikely for it ever to happen. And after Tata took control of Jaguar, it was a similar situation. They released a bunch of new models that gained some traction and raised sales for a while, but they still struggled to turn a profit. All of those vehicles that they recently stopped producing, they said that they were not making money on any of them. As of 2023, both Mercedes and BMW were selling 40 times more vehicles in the United States, which is considerably more than Jaguar has ever been able to sell. I think it is clear at this point that Jaguar is unlikely to ever be a real threat in that segment of the market, so after so many years of struggling to make money, some major changes might be necessary. And that right there is going to bring me to the final reason on my list: reimagining, which sounds like a promising word, but honestly, it is such a bold strategy that I cannot tell if this is like the final nail in the coffin or if it is the beginning of a major comeback. The overall idea behind this plan is to elevate the brand's image so they can attract a younger and wealthier customer base. They have already committed to making all of their cars electric, and that might just be the smallest part of this plan. They're going to just about double the price so they can make more money from each car that they sell and finally be able to turn a profit without having to sell so many of them. Do you see what I mean here? Instead of competing with BMW and Mercedes, which has not gone very well, they want to be seen as a step above them, more in the realm of Bentley or Porsche. I say that this is bold because they are alienating most of their current customers who cannot afford or just don't want to pay twice as much for a car, so they need to attract a bunch of new customers, which can be difficult for such an old brand like this. They have introduced all new branding, including a new logo that uses a blend of uppercase and lowercase letters. Their new tagline is "Copy Nothing," and it seems like the approach so far is to be so different to a point where most people are turned off by the changes, but maybe a small group will really respond to them. Because remember, high profit margins would mean that they do not need to attract as many customers as most other car brands. The head of the company has said Jaguar has no desire to be loved by everybody, and that is obvious at this point. They put out a commercial in late 2024 that was very colorful, but it did not have any cars in it. Elon Musk reacted to it by tweeting at Jaguar, "Do you sell cars?" And the comment section of that video might just be the most critical one I have ever seen, with one of the top comments being, "The only thing brave about this ad is to leave the comment section on." I don't know, this is such a peculiar story, and I'm anxious to see how everyone responds when they start releasing these new vehicles. I'm also anxious to hear about everybody's feelings toward the information in this video, so let me know in the comments, what do you think about Jaguar? It is kind of an aggravating situation because even though the strength of the brand has been there and large companies have been pushing it to succeed, it just can't seem to find a practical place in the market. Do you think these have been the right steps to finally get there, or are they heading to a place that is worse than ever before? Finally, I'm curious, have you ever owned a Jaguar? And if so, when did you own it and what was your experience? And any other thoughts you have about Jaguar or anything else in this video, leave them in the comments. I'd like to hear what you have to say. Thank you for watching.